Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Student Space. In this episode, I'm joined again with Darren, and we are going to chat all about his experience in his first year at Monash studying medicine. Now, if you want to hear about Darren and his high school experience, I do have another episode on that, which I will link in the show notes for you to be able to listen to. So, Darren, welcome back to another episode, but start us off, tell us what were your aspirations for after year 12? Did you want to continue studying?
Sure, thank you for having me again. I did want to continue studying. I never really considered having a gap year. And medicine was the main choice towards if I stayed in Australia, medicine was going to be the big choice for me. But I was considering going overseas a little bit. But I think with COVID and with I just got caught up in sort of doing well in BC, and I didn't really apply for overseas places.
If you were to go overseas, let's pretend COVID didn't exist, where would you have gone and what would you have done?
I didn't really think that through yet. I don't think I'm not sure whether I'd study medicine overseas. I'd like to get a medicine degree in Australia because it's you have to convert from other places. It's a bit more difficult. But I think other places like England, America, the top unis, I think they just have good undergraduate programs, and you can interact with a very diverse range of people, and they're probably all very intelligent and hardworking, which would hopefully rub off on me as well.
Totally. And who knows, hopefully when COVID goes away or when we get to some kind of COVID normal that we can travel, maybe one day you can visit those colleges or overseas universities.
Yeah, I visited them before as a tourist, but hopefully as a student would be nice. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, and so you wanted to study medicine. Did you see any school counsellors to help make a decision or open days? And then why did you go with Monash?
So with open days, I went to Melbourne and Monash open days before COVID. And I don't really know how much they help as a tool for you to learn more about your particular course, but it's good socially and you get to see the campus a bit. With careers, our school organises, I think, 2 careers talks. You have a one-on-one with this careers person and you sort of tell him what you want to do, and he sort of lists out what other subjects you might want to put in your top 8, and also what you might need to do those subjects. Did those 2 things help me that much? I think not really, because I had a pretty firm idea of what I wanted to do. It was just good to get confirmation from those 2 aspects. With why Monash, I think medicine is a pretty classic degree that people go to Monash for, because it is undergraduate and you do less time than in other subjects, than in other unis. And so it's 5 years as opposed to Melbourne, I think and other unis 7. I think it's 7, yeah.
And so this leads me nicely to the next question. I was going to ask you, why direct entry to med as opposed to doing a Bachelor of Biomed or a Bachelor of Science, for example?
Yeah, so time is definitely one reason. And I think also we really get into the gritty aspects of med early on. So we're learning examinations of the body. We're learning very med related content rather than a diverse range of biology, chemistry, physics, which is probably somewhat relevant but not entirely.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and so had you not gotten in, which you definitely did because you received an outstanding ATAR, did you have a backup option?
Yeah, so I wanted to study med no matter what. So the backup options, I guess, were the classic, biomedicine, science. And because I was likely going to get the Chancellor's Scholarship, which is, I'm not sure if it's 99.9 or 99.95. But in that case, I don't have to perform as well in, say, biomed in science to get into medicine, to get the interview. And so I probably would have gone those routes.
Okay, makes sense. And so what prerequisites did you have to satisfy for the direct entry to medicine?
Okay, so I think from reading on the website, I think chemistry is 35 plus, methods is 30 plus, and they recommend you do biology. Were they hard to satisfy? I didn't really think about the prerequisites that much. I think chemistry was the only one I was a little bit worried about because it wasn't a subject I was intently preparing for, but I think it all turned out well. With biology, it does help for med, yeah.
Did you not do bio?
No, I didn't do bio.
So does that mean you had to do a bridging course?
Yeah, I had to do a bridging course, and so I've just gone my ATAR, just gone my offer into Monash, and then they just tell me I have homework to do before uni starts. So I guess it wasn't compulsory. It was okay. I feel like you can make the most of it, make it more efficient. I don't think it was structured in like the best way, especially with it being in the holidays. And it wasn't compulsory. I think they recommend you complete some modules.
Oh, so it wasn't compulsory bridging course.
I think everyone has to enroll in it who didn't do bio, but as to how much you do, I don't think they like check up on you that much. But it does help if for like semester one.
Ah, okay. Makes sense. And now let's talk about the whole process getting into med, because it's not only just your ATAR. So for those who don't know, securing a place at Monash to study medicine, there are a few other requirements. So for example, you have to sit the UCAT, you have to receive a high ATAR, and then you have to sit an interview. Now, we'll talk through all of those different points, but for those who are wondering, the UCAT is called the Undergraduate Clinical Aptitude Test, and anyone in Australia and New Zealand has to sit that if they want direct entry to medicine. Now, what was your experience of the UCAT?
Yeah, first of all, the UCAT testing period's now, so for those of you who are about to sit it, good luck for that, and if you've already sit it, I hope you did well. My experience with that, I had no real clue what it was till January of 2020. So I started in July, on July the 1st, and January is when I attended a workshop for the UCAT, and that's when I was really exposed with it. And it's kind of a weird test. It's like things you do in primary school, but
Hard.
but pushed to like the max. So it's like reading comprehension, but like you get a lot of questions and you don't have much time to do it. It's like basic maths, but same ideas, and it's like pictures as well. So I thought it was kind of a weird. The person who did the workshop recommended that we do like one exam each week. So I tried to stick to that from not every week and not really at the start of the year, but most weeks I try to stick with doing an exam every Saturday because it's a pretty tiring exam and it's 2 hours. And apart from that, I tried to work on my individual sections in that. I think compared to my ATAR, the UCAT was definitely a shakier for me. I didn't perform like as well. I think I scored 95th percentile. And especially going in, I was quite nervous because the time pressure, it's sort of like the oral, it's quite spontaneous. And if you miss a couple questions and you stuff it up, you can really drop a lot.
Do you think you need tutoring or you need additional help to nail the UCAT, or is it possible to just chip away at it yourself?
I think chipping away at yourself is fine. I think having like one session, sort of like I did, one workshop, or just talking to someone who's done the UCAT before you is a really good idea because it sort of gets you over that initial learning curve quite well. They can really introduce you to what the UCAT's like, really prepare you for the fast pace that it is. So when you go into your first one and begin preparing, you sort of have some idea of this roadmap that you can follow. Whereas if you're sort of just blindly going it for yourself, you can figure it out, but it just takes a little while.
Yeah, totally. And just another random question. Did you sit it face to face or is it all online?
It's done on a computer, but it is like face to face. So even during COVID, so in year 12, when I did it really early on, July 1st. And I think that was either before a lockdown or in between lockdowns. So I did my exam in person. I went there, I sat it. But a lot of my friends that did it a bit later in the year, they had to do it at home. But there's like special software to monitor you, but I guess it's just a bit weird doing it at home.
Okay, yeah. So you fully went into like an assessment center, sat on a computer and did it in a room.
Yeah, my assessment center was pretty chill. I was the only one in my room, like the only person. So.
That's so cool. All right. And then, so that's one part of getting into med. The second part is achieving an incredibly high ATAR. You did get 99.95, and I know we did a whole episode on how you did it and your tips, but is there anything else that you'd like to add, or did you want to share any last advice on getting that ATAR to get into med?
I think with ATARs in general, I think it's really important to clarify what you want and then work towards it. So for me, my goal was the highest possible ATAR and like the highest possible scores in general. And so for myself to do that, I'd have to work pretty hard, and I was like content with that. But I think with year 12, when you have to balance so many other things, it's important to know what you want, like whether you really want to push yourself to the max or whether you just want a sufficient score to get into a course. And after that, just do enough work for that and get in. I think most regret comes from people not really knowing their goals and then like unconsciously missing it.
That's totally true. I like that. Setting clear goals and knowing how to aim for it. And actually, let me rephrase it. Having clear goals, knowing where you are now, and then working out how you're going to get there.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
And so the last little part of getting into med is an interview. And this could be the scariest part for everyone because while the rest of the requirements are just study and get a high percentile or a high ATAR, this requires you to sit in front of someone and talk to them. How did this take place and what was your experience with your interview?
So in my case, it was sitting behind a screen at my house. It was over Zoom. Normally it would be in person, which I think would be more intimidating. So in my personal experience, we had breakout rooms, 6 breakout rooms, and like 6 people, and they sort of shift us from one breakout room into another after each station. And that was interesting because I'd sometimes catch the end of the person before me. Like I'd see the other candidate and I'd say, all right. And then we'd move along. I think it was pretty chill. I did sufficient practice for it, and the questions weren't beyond what I was expecting. And the people were like pretty friendly as well. Like they'd nod, they'd listen to me. And once again, probably less intimidating than in person, which made me much more comfortable talking.
Oh, wow. So do they ask questions about you, or is it about med specific, or is it more like, why do you want to study medicine?
The way they do it is they give you a scenario and you have to talk about it a bit. And these scenarios vary a lot. So it could be about, say, obesity, and they're sort of asking, what measures do you think we could do to reduce obesity? The scenario that they usually use to like sort of ask you, why do you want to study medicine, is they say like, it's like 20 years in the future, you're a doctor, you're going back to your school to talk about like career pathways. What would you say to these people? They're like sort of, I don't know why, they make it more creative than simply asking. Yeah.
Oh, these admission people, they're very creative in their questions. This is great.
Yeah, they try.
Did you, again, have like tutoring or practice for the interview? Or did you just chip away at it yourself again? How did you know what questions to prepare for?
There's a lot of resources out there. What I did this 2-part workshop thing with MedEntry. So the first part of the workshop was them just talking to me, excuse me, them just talking to me about the actual interview, what it's like. I think that was like more focused on motivation than actually like, and it was a whole day thing, so I didn't concentrate that much. But the second part of their workshop was really nice. They had these not full day, but like full on interview. So you'd be in a group with 2 other people. One time you'd observe them doing the interview, and the other time you would give the interview. And I think that was really nice because it was pretty similar in style to the actual exam. Apart from that, there are a lot of practice questions out there. I recommend definitely practice with friends that are also preparing for the interview, and sort of checking your answers with each other. And there are sample answers on the internet as well. And I think just practice and exposure and knowing how to answer and structure your answers, answer the questions and structure your answers is really important.
Cool. Great advice. And so one of my followers on Instagram sent in this question and they're wondering, do you really need an ATAR over 99 and a UCAT over the 90th percentile, or do people with lower scores have a chance?
People with lower scores definitely have a chance. That's my short answer. We don't talk about like, well, there's no like database of everyone's ATARs and UCAT that they show us. But I'm definitely aware. Like I think one time I said that you needed those 2 because that's what I thought, but someone just said I was wrong, and I was like, all right. But I think you can definitely be lower than that. If you're rural, you can be you have a bit more leeway with your scores. But in general as well, I think, you can be lower than those 2 scores and get in, and also be mindful that they can sort of compensate for each other as well.
Okay, that's really good to know. And so now let's talk about our overview of the whole med course at Monash. And so I understand you're in the first year, but let's just set up this chat giving an overview of what happens in each of the years. So what happens in first, second, third, up until the 5th year?
Sure. All right. Broadly speaking, your years are split into 2 parts. You have your preclinical, which is before you get into the hospitals, first and second year. Usually you do go into hospitals a little bit, but this year, because of COVID, none of us are getting into hospitals. And in those years, you learn sort of fundamental things. So right now we're about to learn about lower limb. So like all the muscles, bones, nerves, arteries, vessels in your sort of waist area and below. And last couple of weeks, we were learning about the upper body. At the same time, you also learn about things like how to take an examination of someone's like motor skills, how to take an examination of just what they're coming in presenting with, plus things like Health Knowledge Society, which is learning about like country systems for healthcare. And we also learn like mindfulness and things like that because they're a bit worried about our mental health.
That's great.
Which is nice. Yeah, I know, it's really cool. And so it's a pretty well-rounded education. And in year 2, we focus more on systems as well. So this year we're learning upper limb, lower limb, and a bit of cardiology. And next year we learn more systems. I don't know exactly what, probably like digestive system or respiratory system. And in the clinical years, that's when you get really busy. You're basically in the hospital a lot of the days, and you're working. Like sometimes I remember I'm in like choir at med, and there's like different age people there. So one guy, I think it was 4th year, and at the end of choir, he's like, okay, I got to go to the hospital for like a 7 to 7 shift, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. And I was just, this is crazy to me. And you still have exams, you still have lectures to watch, plus that clinical time. So it gets very hectic later on in the course.
Wow. Something to look forward to, I guess. And so, okay, talk me through the transition going from high school to university. Did you find it a huge jump?
Yes, I didn't anticipate it would be a big jump, but it was for me, I think. And I think that gave me better insight into how people who weren't doing that well in year 12 might be feeling as well, or in school might be feeling. So for me, I guess, first off was a lot of my high school friends. Like I was really in touch with my just school community. Like I'd see everyone and we'd like nod at each other. And like I could pick up a chat with anyone. But in uni, it was like all those people were no longer with me because they'd gone off to do their own thing. And secondly, academically, I thought like, I don't know, like you still have to study in uni. And especially because first semester was biology, a lot of biology. And I hadn't done biology before. That got me a bit frustrated. And sometimes, like, I remember people telling me who had done biology that basically first year was like 3/4 stuff they'd learned already, which was a bit annoying for me that I had to learn like basic stuff like mitosis, meiosis, and I had no clue what it was. And it took me a while to get my head around it. So it was definitely a difficult jump, especially I started YouTube and tutoring as well. So that made balancing everything harder rather than in year 12 where I could just solely focus on studying. And that's why the jump to high school to uni wasn't as smooth as some people might expect.
Totally fair enough. And it's nice to hear your experience because, again, like it's the realities of what it is. It's a completely new environment and we're all almost like thrown into the deep end.
Yeah, especially because it's pretty true that you get a lot more independence in uni. Like no one's chasing you up about assignments. The assignment deadline can just pass and you can have like no clue that it has passed. And the lecturers are teaching like vast a group of people, same as the tutors and all that. Whereas in school, they really know each of you personally.
Absolutely. And so how did you go about making friends in the first year? Do you think like the uni or your course was really easy or social to meet people?
I think the course was very social to meet people. I think many systems were in place already because med is a course where you sort of go through with everyone for 5 years rather than an undergraduate course. Plus it's a really small cohort compared to say science or as you did commerce. And so that meant they had a lot of events. Like we went to Luna Park before
really?
COVID. Yeah.
That's so fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. It's probably my favorite event. Luna Park I haven't been there for a very long time, but it was really nice.
Wow. How big is the cohort, by the way?
400 people.
Okay.
And 100 is still overseas. So unfortunately.
Devastating. And so, okay, what subjects did you complete in the first year or maybe even last semester?
Oh, okay, subjects, right. The subjects are like a bit messed up. It's not like school where you have a strict timetable and you repeat every week. So the lectures we got each week were different. So we had biochemistry, and in that we covered how your body sort of gets energy, how your body copies proteins. We had anatomy, and we learned about sort of muscles. What else did we learn about? Yeah, we learned about muscles and the different types of muscle, and also learned about cells, how they divide, what happens to them. Clinical skills is where we learn about all that, taking histories, learning about, like when a patient comes in, the doctor might ask a student to sort of get a history of their complaint, get what they're coming in for, and then report it back to the doctor. So we learn how to do that. HKS is the one where we learn about health systems. So we learned about Indigenous Australian health and sort of rural health as well. And HEP, and was about mindfulness and like what nutrition and all the more like everyday stuff. And finally, we also learn about development. So how people develop like when they're kids and grow up. So it's a very diverse range of subjects.
That's incredible. And that's just in the first semester or in the first year. So you're already straight into covering lots of different things, which is great.
Yeah, definitely.
And so how were you tested on these things? Like, did you have quizzes throughout the semester? Was there like homework check-ins or just like big exams?
I think other people might be surprised, but med, there are very few assessments. So in first semester, apart from the exams, which I'll talk about, we had 2 assessments. One was an assignment where we were assigned like a health system. So I got the Chinese health system with a couple of the other classmates of mine. And we had to discuss how the Chinese health system adapted to COVID in terms of what they did. Second one was an ethics one. So we were given a scenario and we had to talk about the ethics from like 4 different standpoints. And that was all pretty chill. You sort of just do it at home. And then our exams, there are 2 exams. There are 100 questions each. And I think they were about 3 days apart. Oh, multiple choice, by the way, and all at home. So it's like...
Multi-choice? Oh my goodness, yes, that's the best.
Yeah, no, it was very, very good and very lenient. It was difficult, though, I guess. Like the standards for everything are higher because the people doing it did perform well in school. But multiple choice is, yeah, very chill.
Cool. I was going to ask you next about contact hours in the first year. And so I understand, again, your first year is this year and we're in and out of lockdown. But what is your time commitment like?
Okay, so I don't know the sum total, but I'll just add a couple of things up. So usually in terms of classes, like compulsory workshops, tutorials we have to go to, it's about 14 hours over Monday to Friday. And we have 6 lectures, which are usually about an hour each. There, you just watch them whenever you want. Apart from that, there are like optional Q&A sessions and all that. So I guess 20 something hours is probably the contact hours that we'd have.
Well, I guess you don't know in comparison to other courses. I think that's pretty standard to any other science course or degree.
Yeah, I think speaking to my friends, it's not like we have a much bigger workload. And I've heard that my friend's doing like science at Melbourne and he has more lectures than us. I don't know how the other things are, but he has like significantly more lectures than I have to watch.
How closely does the content that you're learning now at uni relate to any other subjects that you did in school? And I know we already touched on biology, but any other subjects that relate?
Okay, so from the subjects that I particularly studied, chemistry a little bit, because we learn about like the pHs in different parts of the body and how it affects, like, say, how well a drug absorbs in our body. Apart from that, I think English helps with writing assignments. Even with someone who's good at English and who isn't, you can see a big difference in how they construct their assignments. And I think it's just really useful skill in general. Apart from that, I don't think there's much else that helps with medicine that I studied. Oh, Latin. Actually, Latin a little bit.
Really?
There are some, yeah, because we're learning all the muscles in that, and they have very long names. Like, there's one called like flexor pollicis brevis, and it's like this muscle in your thumb. And pollicus means thumb in Latin. So little things like that help.
Oh, there you go. Well, there's a little life hack. Everyone study Latin and you'll be great at anatomy.
Apparently Latin used to be a prerequisite. I heard from a student, so I don't know if it's like not true.
Years ago.
Yeah, it would have been years ago.
And so, okay, while it is really competitive to get into med, do you think it's competitive now that you're in the course?
I think there's definitely an underlying competitiveness a little bit because, yeah, you get a bunch of like kids who are doing well and you can sort of feel sometimes they're sort of feeling out each other and seeing how much they know the content. But overall, I think it's pretty collaborative more so, especially during second sem because we don't really talk about like exam scores. There's no like release of them at the end of the semester. So if you like have questions, you ask other people, they help you out as well.
Okay, that's really good to know. And so, of course, this year is a lockdown year. We're in COVID. What were the major challenges of this being a first-year uni student?
Because I spent all of year 12 in lockdown, I guess it wasn't that big of a challenge. Yeah, I don't think it was that big of a challenge. I think there are some hands-on things that would be much better done in person. For example, like we have to do tests with the hands on a patient, and like a teacher showing us that over Zoom is quite difficult for me to understand exactly what they're doing. So that would be nice. And also seeing, I guess, other people and being able to collaborate in person would also be a good alternative to doing it over Zoom. But apart from that, it's been pretty fine for me.
That's good. And so you have another 4 years ahead of you. What are you most looking forward to in the course?
I'm most looking forward to getting into the hospitals and meeting the patients. I think I really like interacting with people, and I've been to hospitals before as well. And I think there's a really special type of bond that a doctor or like a medical person has with the patient.
Absolutely. Now, do your placements start in first year, or is that something next year or third year?
Usually there are a couple placements in first and second year, which is why they usually get us to do our vaccines and all that a lot earlier in the year. But like the full-on clinical time is year 3 to year 5. So because of COVID, I doubt I'll be getting any clinical time soon. So it's probably the year 3 to 5 that will be waiting for me.
And so I have another follow-up question for you. Someone reached out and asked me, is it true that med students have no life? And you can interpret this however you want. So it could be like too much study, not enough social life, or that it's really intense. What are your thoughts?
I think med students definitely have lives. I think in general with uni, you put in as much effort as you want. I think in medicine, whether you get 100% or whether you pass is not that big of a difference in the first 2 years. And so you don't really see people just like smashing out exams and questions every single day. I see people do go out a lot. I think there is a sort of a work hard, play hard culture in medicine, which I don't like entirely endorse as well. I feel like you should do other things like, making a podcast or making a YouTube channel or something, which is quite nice. But yeah, they definitely go out a lot, and studying is not as massive of a priority as it was in year 12.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's good to debunk some of those myths. And I was wondering, how do you balance your social life, part-time work, casual work, even like your YouTube channel with studying med?
Definitely. So with studying med, what I try and do is I just try and stay on top of my content. So lectures are the biggest one that I often fall behind on. So I try and watch all those within the week that they're due. And apart from that, I haven't been like too concerned about like reviewing it a lot or being really intensive with my preparation. And that frees up more time for me. Apart from that, I do have tutoring each week. I try and I see them every week. So I set them in times where I can teach them. And YouTube, usually I try and do 2 times a week, sometimes 1 time a week if I'm particularly busy. But I think the fact that I'm not as full on with my studying frees up a lot of time for me.
Nice. And the last question is something that you wish you knew when you were in year 11 and year 12. So now you've been out of school for almost 6-7 months now. What's something that you would like to go back and tell younger Darren?
I'd probably tell myself to just enjoy everything a bit more. Yeah, because once again, I really liked my classes. I really liked my whole year level. And so when you graduate, you don't see a lot of those people again. A lot of my friends have already gone overseas to America. And sure, I can keep in contact with them or see them overseas, but it's a bit different. I think the best way to sort of not be too upset by them leaving is just by enjoying the time you had with them beforehand as much as possible. So I would tell myself to just enjoy everything a little bit more.
Love it. Some great advice. Well, that concludes our episode today about your experience in first year med. I've learned so much and gained so much insight, and I know my listeners have as well. So thank you.
No, thank you, Mia. It's been really enjoyable having this podcast with you.
I'm glad. And lastly, if anyone wants to reach out to you or has any more questions, I recommend following Darren on YouTube. So you can just search Darren Tan, and I'll also link all his Instagram and his email in the show notes as well.
Thank you.